Hey guys, my theory is existential theory. And as you can see, I put in some cute little pictures. You're going to notice throughout my PowerPoint that I love pictures, so hopefully you guys can learn a little bit from that. So what is existential theory? Okay. Humans are self-aware and self-determined individuals who have the freedom to form their own opinion of the world, live authentically, and take responsibility for their own lives. So basically, existentialism or existential theory focuses on each of us as human beings and then how to build therapy or counseling upon these characteristics. It started off as a philosophy of existence, and that's why I'm going to say existentialism a lot, because that is the philosophy of where the theory came from. So a good quote from our book is basically, we are thrust into a meaningless and absurd world. We are challenged to accept our loneliness and create meaning in life. So it sounds pretty positive, right? What I like about this theory, as you'll see later on, is that it is universal and can be applied across different cultures, religions, and beliefs. And then you can see Snoopy over there. So existential psychotherapy is a philosophical method of therapy that focuses on free will, self-determination, and search for meaning. So Snoopy's just questioning his life. Where am I going? What am I doing? What's my meaning in life? So that's basically the concept of existentialism. So the key terms in existential theory would be death, meaningless, existential isolation, freedom, anxiety, and absurdity. And they're all pretty significant concerns of an individual's existence. So let me kind of explain them in regards to existential theory. So let's start off with death. Basically, we are all going to die. We all know it. We cannot avoid it. So rather than try to forget about death or avoid death, we need to accept it, come to terms with it, and find our meaning in life while we can. We have a limited existence on this world, so we need to focus on the meaning and not just going through life. Another term is meaninglessness. Everyone has their own purpose and goals in life. Sometimes life seems to have no meaning because of what goes on in the world around us, all the negativity in the world. We're all forced to confront what gives us meaning and find meaning when there was once no meaning. It's kind of confusing, but it's basically we need to look for meaning in every aspect of our lives. So the third is existential isolation. So although we are surrounded by friends and family, we are essentially alone in this world. We are born alone and we die alone. And no matter how close we are to others, we are all our own person. We must accept that no matter how close we are to others, we are our own person and we are alone. So the other concept is freedom. As humans, we are free to do or be anything we want. So existential theory addresses the idea that we limit our freedom by settling for an average life or letting others influence our lives and choices. So basically, we have the freedom to do anything we want, and we cannot let people or our faulty beliefs influence our choices and our freedom. Anxiety. So everyone experiences anxiety, and existentialists believe this is normal. Anxiety forces us to recognize the truths of existence and motivates us to change. So it's okay to be anxious about things. Anxiety gives us motivation to change our lives. Anxiety is a good thing. Another is absurdity. Sometimes life does not make sense. You could question, why did that innocent child become diagnosed with cancer? Or why did that teenager who was active in school, got good grades, a good person, die in that car accident? Life does not make sense. Bad things will happen for no apparent reason, and we must accept that this is our world's nature. Our world is absurd, and we have to accept this. So those are the basic terms of existentialism. The key concepts of existentialism is we are able to be self-aware, so we are intelligent enough to continually evaluate ourselves and our lives as a whole. We are free to make our own choices, so we are responsible for the outcomes. With freedom, we make choices. We are responsible for the outcome of these choices. If something bad happens as a result of our choices, we must accept that we have the freedom to make that choice, and we have to be responsible for the outcome. All of us are completely unique, and we must find and know ourselves. Every person on earth is completely unique and one of a kind. It is important to remain true to oneself, especially when interacting with others and building relationships. So everyone, please, please, please be yourself. Our purpose and meaning in life is ever changing. We have to continually adjust with it. The meaning and purpose of our lives might change as we continue to develop. What isn't important now may be important later. That means we must continually evaluate ourselves and recreate ourselves. As human beings, we all have anxiety. There will always be aspects of our lives that make us anxious. Going to a job interview makes you anxious. Just little things in life will cause anxiety, and it's completely normal. Always be aware that we are all going to die. That is not a very positive concept, but knowing that we are going to die should make us live life to the fullest. As you guys have heard, no regrets, YOLO. Well, it's not exactly like that, but we should make sure that we live up to our full potential. Find who you are and who you are supposed to be and embrace it. So let's go into a little bit of history about existential theory. So it started out in the 19th century with, I'm going to butcher some names, FYI, Soren Kierkegaard. He lived from 1813 to 1855. He did not live very long. Okay. He is also known as the father of existentialism. He kind of created the philosophy. He was a very devout Christian, so he used existentialism in his faith. He was interested in the relationship with God and the ultimate possibility of that relationship. He also believed that you can either submit to society's rules and make life simple, but it is a dead end. To break out of the dead end, one must live in the religious mode and commit. Although he was a Christian, he was against organized religion because it could also lead a person to an inauthentic existence, a dead end. As you guys know, sometimes people get into the church and They just go through the motions. So he was definitely against that. He was a Christian, but he wanted everyone to be authentic and to be real. Another 19th century philosopher is Friedrich Nietzsche. He lived from 1844 to 1900. Friedrich Nietzsche was the opposite. He was a devout atheist, if there is such a thing. He's known as saying God is dead, and he believed that universe has no regard for humanity because natural forces continually destroy people. People eventually die and there is no afterlife. And although this sounds very, very depressing, he had hope that humanity would create a so-called Superman that would overcome man or overcome human nature. So this Superman is also called the Overman, and it is an idea of the ultimate human achievement. So both of these philosophers created a strong foundation for existentialism, and I find it kind of ironic that they both believed in existentialism, but they were at complete opposite ends of the spectrum in their religious beliefs. So that's what I feel about. I think existentialism is very, very universal. Okay, let's go into the 20th century developments. So Martin Heidegger, he was a very influential person in the 20th century. He lived from 1889 to 1971, and he lived in Germany. He was German. So Martin Heidegger, he believed humans are beings who are all connected in being. He wrote the book Being and Time in 1927, and this focused completely on the idea of being. If we find our own being first, then we will be able to understand what it means for others to exist. Being can also be called Dasein. Correct me if I'm saying that wrong, but Dasein means being here and existing. So Heidegger believed we desire to connect to being, and this causes anxiety when we're not able to connect, which cannot be overcome because we are aware we will all die. This anxiety is good because it will allow us to live life to the fullest in an authentic sense. So he kind of had the idea that we need to be authentic, and the anxiety of not connecting to being leads us to that. He believed in finding one's own existence and how to live rather than accepting the ways of society and what is considered acceptable. When we follow anonymous authority, we become alienated from our own being. I find this very ironic because Martin Heidegger was actually a part of the Nazi Party in 1932 because he was attracted to the message of community and nationalism. And it's just strange to me because he talked about the idea of authentic existence, and following anonymous authority is not authentic, but he did follow that anonymous authority. He followed the Nazi Party, so I kind of think he went against what he might have believed. Other 20th century developments. So a French philosopher, Jean-Paul Sartre, 1905 to 1980, and his partner, they never got married, but I believe that they were partners, was French philosopher Simone de Beauvoir, 1908 to 1986. So Jean-Paul Sartre wrote the book Being and nothingness. And in there's a section called existential psychoanalysis. So he kind of first was bringing the idea of existentialism into psychology, and how instead of a philosophy, it was becoming a part of a psychology. He believed God does not exist, and to us this is very distressing. There is no being tying all of creation together, and a person's consciousness is not a connection to God. It is just a unique characteristic of human beings. People who try to live inauthentically and deny responsibility of consciousness will be destroyed. Life is what a person makes of it, although many people decide to let life happen around them. So he believed in freedom, choice, and responsibility. And then his partner, Simone de Beauvoir, she was her and Sartre were leading advocates of existentialism after World War II. She wrote The Ethics of Ambiguity in 1947. She also agreed with the idea of freedom, but she took it just a little bit farther. She said, my freedom can be achieved only through the freedom of others, and no existence can be fulfilled if it is limited to itself. So she was kind of more of a helping individual. She said that you can achieve freedom through helping others find their freedom, which I find amazing, because I think that's what we're doing as counselors. Okay, so World War II. So what brought existentialism to other parts of the world and caused it to be popular? Well, World War II was a huge influence in that. Existentialism developed as a reaction to a social situation. So we all know what happened during World War II. A lot of people got everything taken away from them. They lost their freedom. They were forced to do things that they would never have done. And there was a sense of despair and uncertainty throughout society after World War II, and many people had anti-establishment attitudes. They did not want to follow the government. They wanted to be their own person. So because of that, they thought, wow, that existentialism is all about being your own unique person and having the freedom to live up to your own potential, and no one can take that from you or tell me what to do. And this was such an amazing concept to people at this time. There was such a lack of acknowledgement for human life and dignity during World War II, and they just wanted that dignity back. So during this time, existentialism was seen as a realistic philosophy that could apply to one's everyday problems. So, Existential Psychotherapy Foundation. So this is the transition from existentialism from psychology to psychotherapy. So psychoanalyst Bedard Boss, sorry, I completely butchered that, and psychiatrist Ludwig Binswanger, they first brought the idea about. They believed in Daseins analysis. I'm so sorry. Which is the analysis of being here. So they kind of created the existential phenomenological approach. And then two really important people, especially to us here in the United States, would be Viktor Frankl and Rollo May. Okay, so Viktor Frankl, he was from Germany. He was imprisoned in a Nazi concentration camp during World War II, and he expected to die. He saw others die around him, including his own family. So through this experience, he searched for meaning to understand why some people died and others didn't. So in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, that's basically what he wrote about. And you could see where this is leading to existentialism, because the world is absurd. So it's hard to understand why some people die and why some people don't. But he was trying to do so. He also was a student of Adler's for a bit, but he did not completely agree with Adler and was expelled from Adler's society. And then Rollo May, he introduced existentialism to America, an American psychologist. He attended a summer school taught by Adler and found Adler's theory to be too simplistic and general. And he also suffered a near-death experience. He contracted tuberculosis and spent several years in recovery. And during this time, he theorized about anxiety. He agreed with Soren Kierkegaard, the father of existentialism, that the threat of becoming nothing. So there was always a threat of being nothing, and he believed anxiety was motivational. He later became a professor of psychology at NYU and gave speeches and wrote books about existentialism. So he kind of was a huge advocate for existentialism in America. And in this slide, I incorporated different pictures of the four people I just talked about. So on the top, you'll see Rollo May, and one of quotes of his is, "If you do not express your own ideas, if you do not listen to your own being, you betray yourself." So be authentic. And then down below, you'll see Viktor Frankl. "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." So he was very big in the concept of freedom. And then on the left, high up, you'll see Medard Boss, and then on the right bottom, you'll see Ludwig Binswanger. So here's an idea of what they all looked like. So the therapeutic process. So I will tell you guys that existentialism existential therapy, there is no exact structure for it. So there's no exact techniques that one would use, because it is based off of a philosophy. So what the counselor focuses on is what is blocking the client's freedom. What is the client doing that contributes to their loss of freedom and autonomy? So, and then they try to widen the client's perspective. And then the last part is accept the freedom and responsibility that comes with your widening perspective and your choices. So the counselor basically focuses on you as a whole. So in the therapeutic process, this does not solve problems of living. Instead, it just removes the roadblocks in living. And one must accept responsibility for their loss of freedom. It has an immediate, ongoing experience with the goal of widening their presence in their journey to freedom. So overall, find your freedom. So in existential theory, the causes of hurt and suffering are too much anxiety. I know I said anxiety is a good thing, and it seems like I'm contradicting myself, but having so much anxiety and not using it to fulfill your potential, instead letting it be debilitating toward your growth and development, that is a cause of hurt and suffering. Inability to develop or change. So life is ever changing, and your purpose does change in life, but if you refuse to change, you will ultimately be lost, and that is definitely a cause of hurt. The third is conformity. Living according to how others think you should live, just conforming to the ways of society and not finding your own uniqueness and your own freedom. The fifth takes no responsibility. You have freedom, so take responsibility for your situation. The fifth, you are alone. So dependency. Dependency is that you are alone. You must be independent and reliant upon your own self. That's not to say that you cannot have a support system, but ultimately we are alone in our own body. So we must be independent. So I put this little picture in there. I really liked this quote. Existential suffering involving a perceived threat to the integrity of the self, helplessness in the face of that threat, and exhaustion of psychosocial and personal resources for coping. So I just want everybody to kind of take a minute to think about that. So growth and change. How does one grow and change in this theory? Acceptance of the key terms of existence. So the key terms I went over in the beginning is you must accept your freedom, anxiety, isolation, death, meaninglessness, and absurdity. They are all part of life. Finding meaning in all aspects of your life. Everything you do or want to do has a meaning to you. Find that meaning. Why is that important to you? And if it's not important to you and you have to do it, then you can still find a meaning in it. The third, independency, autonomy. Live authentically. Honor your own autonomy and always be who you are. The fourth, recreation. As you change, you must recreate yourself and your meaning. Living up to one's own potential. Always strive to be the best version of who you are. We have an unlimited amount of potential, and we limit ourselves based on so many things. So live up to your potential, please, people. And we are responsible for what happens to us. So I kind of put happens in quotations because things don't just happen to us. I mean, like I said earlier, some bad things happen and the world is absurd, but a lot of the things that happen to us are because of our own choices and because we let them happen to us. So take responsibility for your freedom and choices. And I added in here this little picture of the growth mindset and the fixed mindset. I'm not sure if it's from existential theory or not, but I feel like it kind of embodies it. So in the growth mindset, failure is an opportunity to grow. In the fixed mindset, failure is the limit of my abilities. So just kind of read those little quotes throughout there, and I think that in existentialism, it involves allowing us to have an unlimited amount of potential and choosing what we want to do and finding our own meaning, and I think that the growth mindset really embodies that. Okay, so reflection questions. What type of existential anxiety do you often experience? What is your normal, everyday, or every week anxiety? So just think about that, and how does it change you? How does it motivate you? Does it motivate you? Just think about that. Do you believe that existential theory can be universal and applied to a variety of people? You guys know I do, but I would like to know your take on that. Would you consider using existential theory in your future counseling career? Would you consider applying it to your own life? So not only would you consider using this theory, dating this theory, would you consider using it in your own life and for your own growth and development? Okay, so here are my references. Take a good look, they're very interesting. Well, actually, if you do want to learn a little bit more about this theory, then you can always use these references and go and read about it. So this is the end of my presentation. I want to thank you guys for listening, and I apologize for the butchering of names or if I just kind of started babbling. Thank you!